I've always thought about and felt comfortable with musical instruments, you know. Started with a melodica and a harmonica, and then a piano, and then guitar. And when I sort of worked out how to play guitar, then I started really writing songs in earnest. Before that, it's sort of been bits of music on the piano. So that's kind of why I'm the sort of songwriter I am, because I've got two very different ways of thinking about music. My parents were really into Indian music and Arabic music, and sort of John Cage and things like that, and real old blues and gospel, like Mahalia Jackson and things. And then there was the pop stuff, and I suppose the first time I really got excited about pop music was briefly Adam and the Ants, and then got really excited about the Specials. And then when I started knocking about with Graham, he was really into the Beatles and the Who, so I got into all of that, and then discovered the Kinks through that, and then got very caught up in all of that for a few years, and then sort of started going back to sort of feelings about music that I'd had when I was younger.
I suppose I started thinking about music, playing music with other people when I met Damon, really. But we were playing different kinds of stuff. We were like, he was writing kind of more free or sort of jazz sort of kind of things on piano, and I was playing saxophone with him, and then I was learning the guitar at that point as well, really. And our ambitions were mine were pretty low, I think, lower than Damon's. I just wanted to be a sort of group, like sort of the same sort of size as My Bloody Valentine or Dinosaur Jr. or whatever. And Damon said one day on the tube he'd quite like one day to involve brass instruments, and I was quite horrified. I don't know, we were only 19. And I was kind of a bit of an indie purist, probably am a little bit still.
It was the first time I felt freedom to write in the way that I wanted to write. You know, we'd been we'd had a lot of kind of pressure on us on the first record to come up with something, you know. I don't know, we felt we had a pressure, I don't know. I just like, I've always lacked kind of, though it might seem hard to believe, self-belief. And I think when we first signed, I was so kind of sort of grateful that someone had actually, because I'd had about 3 years of going absolutely nowhere and really getting very miserable about what on earth was going to happen to me, because I dropped out of college after a year and just ended up worked in a fast food shop at Euston Station, and just lots of kind of unpleasant jobs. So the first album, I kind of was, you know, I when someone in the record company said we want something that was more this, I tended to do it. But in a way, it was very good discipline, because I learned that I had to sort of learn what it was about songwriting. You know, I had to kind of really, because I think, you know, you can only start to write good songs, well, I could, once I'd made a lot of mistakes. It's just unfortunate that some of them I made them public, but, you know, that happens. They weren't demos, they were finished, and they were supposed to be kind of sort of the first 3 songs of the second album, but they just, but you know, I learned a lot from working with him, and he gave me his well, didn't give me it, actually made me pay for it. So I bought it off him for £400 or something, and my songwriting it started really in earnest when I got that machine, and I wrote. I've written in some way every at least once or Part Life and Modern Life's Rubbish, or Part Life especially, was all written on it, and it was. I think that's where I started to get that sense of quite a bigger arrangements, because it was the first time I had something at home which I could actually work, because I'm I'm not very technically minded, you know, and I do my guitar track, drum track, 2 vocals, whatever, and I still have 4 tracks left. So, and I had keyboards and stupid instruments. I used to always fill it up, you know. So it was a very, very great thing that he gave me, in a sense.
I was listening to Part Life the other night and I was kind of a bit embarrassed. I mean, it's decent pop music, I suppose, but decent pop music doesn't really make me feel happy.
I was very proud of it. I remember listening to it back, thinking, I mean, having not thinking it was going to be really successful, but just thinking it was kind of, it was pretty cool, you know. And I'd never felt particularly cool, so it was nice to feel cool.
When we were recording stuff like on Part Life, I was a little bit, I wouldn't be pressing my points very much. If I wanted, I'd be too embarrassed to say I wanted the guitars louder because I thought I'd appear like, as an egoist or something like that, so I'd stay quite quiet, and in that way the importance of the guitars went pretty much at the expense of weird keyboards and too many backing vocals. And in that way I think it sounds poppy. But once you take away things that aren't needed, it becomes a little more raw and a bit more essential. Like, I suppose we're learning that with the last 2 records anyway.
The day that Girls and Boys went in the charts at 5, at number 5, I started, you know, bearing in mind that on the previous album we hadn't got any higher than 26. So it was a big leap, you know. I started getting panic attacks and I just, you know, I had a really bad time. But I mean, it was bad during the day and great at night because I'd just drink to sort of sort myself out, and then I'd have a great night, but then I'd wake up and it would be even worse the next day, so, you know. You have to be careful of things like that, otherwise they can get on top of you.
In the falsehoods of pop music, and I kind of realised that, and I think Damon did, that it was going to wreck us. So I think what we had to do was to try and get back to what our beliefs about our music were when we first started. We were all pretty bored, and we all had a little bit of a crisis in the mid-90s. And we all had our ways, mostly self-destructive, of kind of dealing with it.
During that period, I found it very difficult to be still and silent with myself. And it's hard to write songs on, you know, in a room and focus on it when, you know, you got DTs or whatever. It's not easy. So maybe something about that record reflects that kind of neurosis, you know. I definitely, my songwriting went to a weird extreme during that period. I mean, it's funny, you know, in the British press when it came out, it got 5 out of 5 in every single magazine, which is ridiculous, but it's just the nature of the British press. And then it became the most unpopular album, you know, within a year. Everyone said it was the worst record ever made, as opposed to the best one.
We started improvising on the Blur album a little bit, and that would be taped and then edited into something like Essex Dogs was done. I think I brought a tortoise album in or something, and people thought it was quite interesting. And we just started having a jam, and it turned into Essex Dogs. And that was one of my proudest. That was one of the little times where I was most pleased with what we'd done when we'd edited Essex Dogs up, and you know, Stephen had said, "Look, I've done this with it." It was a lot of music. It was probably about 40 minutes, 45, nearly maybe an hour of improvisation, which he edited into a piece, which I was really happy with. I thought it was brilliant.
Going to Iceland, and just that's what changed it for me. It was, you know, suddenly I wasn't writing my songs in West London. I was writing them looking out over the Arctic ocean and mountains, and very dark, no light in the winter, and just very different feeling, and I mean, it in its, in my kind of sort of modest little way, it had a massive effect on me, and I think musicians or whatever, I think any artist, if they kind of really connect with a place, it tends to change their lives. I think, it's difficult when someone's your best friend, and then, how many years later? About 6 years later, you're in this big business together, and you haven't really had time for a relationship to catch up, because you've just been with each other all the time working, but you've kind of, it was difficult, and it's still, it's difficult for us to sort of be the friends that we once were, because we spend so much time with each other anyway, and it kind of, if we spent any more time, you wouldn't have any life. Graham he listens to speed metal at the moment. That's what he likes, and I can hear nice stuff in it, but it's not my choice. And I listen to a lot of, I love film music. That's what I sort of love doing. I love Latin music, and I listen to a lot of odd stuff. I don't listen to any guitar music. The only guitar music I listen to is Super Furry Animals, I think. Everything else is sort of, so there's always going to be kind of a slight conflict there, Maybe it's creative tension.
I mean, there is sort of maybe two types. There's like a pop and a weird, and they're both like little cars in a race, And the pop car was obviously very gleaming and fast, and the weird car was a bit like an old bright orange Saab and didn't really. But we've kind of decided to do a lot of work on the Saab. With all our albums, there seems to be, like on the first one, there was Sing, which kind of was a doorway to the next record. Modern Life is Rubbish. And then on that record, there seems to be a doorway through. There's always like one or two records that lead on to the next album. And it's like Essex Dogs from Blur was the doorway through to 13. And you can kind of go through the albums in that way. It's like albums is like a weird atrium of doors, with lots of doors, and every door has got a song written on it, and you can go in any direction.
My life changed after finishing that record. I did it when I did this. I did at the same time I was doing this film score with Michael Nyman, so I did both things concurrently. I did one in the morning in West London, and I'd get in my car and I'd drive to North London and record the album in the afternoon and the evening, and then get up the next morning. And just that period of work was just, I'd never experienced anything like it before, but it kind of sort of, it really broadened my horizons. And I sort of don't think anything of working like that now, doing 100 things at once. I just realised that I was actually quite lazy. Musically, I didn't push myself. I push myself a lot harder now. So I think 13 for me is a record that's changed my life in a very positive way.
I think our musical taste, and just as we've just gotten older, we're a lot more relaxed. We found out there's more important things to life than packing out arenas and making park life and girls and boys. You go mad if you do that for the rest of your life. You've really got to do stuff that you feel is important to your own spirituality or outlook or whatever.
It's harder for everyone else to get their side across than me. I have to be careful not just making people do things, because that's not what making music's about. It's allowing everyone else to sort of get into and do something they're really happy with. And it is true to a degree. I do write kind of some fast songs, especially so keep Graham happy.